are taking a look at a review of another kit, and it's a kit that I've recently seen, the Hasegawa B5N2 Kate carrier attack bomber. Had this kit for a while, picked it up on the used market, finally decided to buy it, and I figured it was a good time to go through this review. The decals included in the kit are 2 aircraft that took part in the attack on Pearl Harbor, and we'll take a look at those, excuse me, in a second. I did realize I did the introduction for this in my latest What's on My Desk. I believe it was the May 2024 video that I introduced this as one of the kits I was building next, and I did a quick intro in that, and then I actually started building the kit, and I never did this review. So it's going to be a little bit of a weird one because the kit started already. So, yeah. Anyways, I have a few extra little bits and pieces in here, which I will get rid of. I have some aftermarket wing folds and the Edward canopy masking, which I keep in here, but is not part of the actual kit. So I'm going to go through this. It's going to be weird because some parts are going to be off the sprues, but yeah, I'm sorry. Like I said, I got a little bit ahead of myself with this one. We'll take a look at the, you know what, let's take a look at the instructions first. I can't remember how I do this. Do I do instructions and then, no, I think I do kit and then instructions and then decal. Anyways, we'll go through the plastic. As I said, I got this on the used market and some pieces had already fallen off the sprue. So I have them sitting in a little plastic baggie here so I don't lose track of anything. And then, as I said, I have been cutting parts off of the sprues because I started building. So this is sprue A. Normally your fuselage halves would live in here. Comme ça. So you, obviously I've cut them out because I'm getting ready for paint, but that's where they live. You've also got your flaps, inner and outer flaps, and the flaps have a really, really nice, I'll zoom in here just a little bit. Oh, my microphone. Apologies everyone for that. I'm gonna zoom in here just a little bit, get you a good look at what the fabric detailing on these flaps. It's just subtle enough that it looks good. It's not ridiculously over molded. I think that would look, especially if you do a bit of variation in color between the metal and the fabric, I think that will really, really sell as a fabric covered control surface, in my humble opinion. Also on here, you've got your wheels. They are in halves. They do not have treads. Similar to most carrier aircraft, they are like a balloon style. You don't need treads on a deck. And it does come with a very slight flat spot, weight on wheel, very slight, which would also be accurate because carrier aircraft tended to have higher pressure tires, and you wouldn't have had as much sink on the tires because of that. Anyway, so that's that. These 3 spots, this is where you would have had your, let's see if I remember how this goes. See, like this. This is where you would have had your sidewalls for your cockpits, which again, I have already started working on. I've glued some bits and bobs on there. And then this was your cockpit floor, which, you know, is this one. But again, I've glued some bits and bobs on it already. But that's what you would get on sprue A, fuselage, flaps, wheels, and your floor and 2 sidewalls for your cockpit. Again, beautiful molding. It's an older kit. I don't even know the date on this, to be perfectly honest. I'd have to look and see if there's a copyright. 2000 is the copyright on this. So it's a 24-year-old kit. I guess it's on the side of the box here too. Yeah. Anyways, I mean, you know, in a modern style kit, you'd probably see these tires being molded as a single piece with a slide mold or something like that to reduce the number of seams. But again, your surface detail is beautiful on this kit. And I'm going to split this box so I have a place to put the sprues that I've talked about. As well, obviously, they've been taken off the out of the bags and everything because I've been building the kit. Let's see if I can find something, go in some sort of order with this. I'm usually all over the place in terms of what sprues I talk about, but let's go with this one. Sprue B and Sprue C are your wings, the lower and upper wings. They do come in the 2 halves. Again, really, really nice surface detail. You get a difference here where the fuel tanks are. The panels where the fuel tanks are, both top and bottom, have a slightly different finish to them. which looks really good as well. Your fabric covered control surfaces are once again nicely made, interpreted like fabric. You've got a little bit of a dishing going on where the fabric would settle down inside the structure. Really, really nice. Interestingly, on the insides of these upper wings, I'll zoom in again so you can get a good look at this, right? On the insides of the upper wings, there's this little, get it in focus and frame, there's this little lip, and that helps align the wing when you put the fuselage on. So there's a nice tight seam between that, which I think is a really nice touch, and it locks that in. Like I can hang it upside down and it's not going anywhere. So that is a really nice feature, and just ensures you get a nice positive location when you mount that. Like I said, look at this. I can literally, it doesn't come off. So when you are gluing those wings together, you've got it's a nice gluing surface. Lots of the plastic surrounds it like a taco shell, and you get glue on all sides. So that's gonna be a nice, crisp, easy to assemble fuselage seam. And as well, that wing to body, that wing to fuselage seam will be very nice, because you're not gonna have any opening of that seam. It's holding itself nice and tight. So that is a really nice touch, and I gotta give Hasegawa credit for that. Now, interestingly, out of the box, the wings include a cut line on the inside for cutting off the wings and folding them up. Again, it's not included in the kit. I'm assuming, and I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments if you know more than I do, I believe there was a version of this kit that did come with a wing fold out of the box. This particular boxing doesn't have it, so I went out and invested in the Wolfpack resin wing folds. But it's nice because I have the pre-cut line. I don't have to worry about trying to figure out where to cut. I just cut along that line and throw it all together. And as well, there's these little molded ridges inside the wing, and they are like a structural member. So the wings, there's a corresponding on the lower wing, they'll mate, and it stops the wings from crushing in the middle. And you see that a lot in other kits where the wings are large and hollow, and if you squeeze the middle of the wing, the edges open up, like fish mouth. So it can be very difficult to get a nice tight seam, or after you've built it, you go to pick it up, you grab it by the wing and you put a bit of pressure on it, and pop, your seams pop on the front and the leading edge and trailing edge. That little bit of extra structure inside, make sure that doesn't happen. And as well, this frame here where that little lip is I talked about, it has a corresponding shelf it sits on, again, to make sure you've got lots of really nice positive mounting points. And then again, you've got the seam break, so you've got inner and outer form. So it's a really, really well engineered kit. You can tell that whoever engineered this was thinking ahead down the line about what needs to be done to make this kit even better. So that's really nice to see. Really thoughtful engineering on the engineers at Hasegawa. I'm running out of... Okay, well, let's just grab this sprue. Sprue F. So Sprue F includes your engine pieces, your spinner, it looks like exhausts, intake, more parts of your engine. I believe these are where your two firewall halves would have been mounted that had fallen off in the box. And then your cowling. Again, beautiful cowling, single shot. Lots of extra sprue to protect that, to make sure nothing gets scratched or damaged or it doesn't get broken off during transport of the kit. You've also got your prop piece here, and I'm not sure what that is. I'm assuming it's probably something to do with where the exhausts come out along the bottom of that firewall. The engine is really, really nice. It's got the separate accessory housing on the front, separate ignition wires, lots of little sprue gates to protect the little tiny pieces. And then the rear, it's a 2-row radial. The rear row is built sort of into a sheet, it's molded as one. So, you'll have to play with that in terms of what you can see. I suspect once the front row is installed on the back row and it's put into the cowling, you're not even going to notice that that's there. But again, it depends on how far you want to take it. If you want to paint the engine steel, or paint it flat black and then paint the engine steel, the cylinders, and keep that flat black to hide it, or paint the whole thing steel and just use a lot of black wash back there to darken it, I really suspect, because the cylinders are offset, you're not going to notice that at all. I suspect you could just paint the whole thing steel and then pick out all your details by brush, and once you put the cowling on, it's all going to disappear and you're not going to see it. But again, really, really nice. The engines are really, really beautifully done. The push rods, all of the cylinder, the fins, the cooling fins, again, your ignition wires, your accessory housing. It's easy to paint. You can paint that gray separately, plop it on after the fact. Your ignition wires can be painted whatever color, aluminum or black or whatever you need to do. And it can be mounted on after the fact, and it makes it really easy to get in here and paint your push rods black and all that other stuff. So beautiful, again, it was engineered by a model builder. It wasn't engineered by an engineer. It was engineered clearly by somebody who builds models and knows the build process and has made it easy. I'm just gonna adjust this so it makes it a little bit easier. Anyways, moving on. We got Sprue K. Sprue K had a lot of cockpit parts on it. Again, I've broken off a lot of little pieces here. Broken off. I've taken off a lot of bits, a lot of the pieces that are on this cockpit, a lot of these little levers and the seat pieces and whatnot, and the seats themselves. I also have this little shot cup full of pieces that need to be painted interior green. So you've got cockpit pieces in here, tail hooks, landing gear, main landing gear, the gun, your bomb sight, tail wheel, more bits and bobs and stuff. So you've got a little bit of a mix of pieces. Up here in the corner is where your seats would have been. They actually fell off in the box on me. And they are in that. They were in the little baggie. They're now inside the painting shot glass waiting to go over and get painted. But yeah, again, beautifully molded. The landing gears have lots of nice detail. The gun, one side of the breech is pretty flat. The other side has a lot of the detail in it. The gun sight's good. Again, a good set, painting, black wash, dry brush, and all of this detail will just pop and it will look beautiful. Sprue D. Sprue D has the horizontal stabilizers on it. And again, beautifully interlocking keyed tabs. So when they interlock, they overlap each other and lock in, and you can't get sag in your tails. They're going to lock in straight and hold themselves straight. Beautiful. The propeller, beautifully done. Lots of good detail in that hub. And I believe the actual part, I believe it's number 14 here. No, it's actually this one right here, 15, is the prop boss that fits on the front. The part of the spinner, actually I think it's a three-way piece. Yeah, there's this piece here, 15, has all the counterweights on it for the propellers, and then there's a little spinner that goes on top that'll cover for the piston. So it's the propeller, and there's a two-piece hub, and it's an open hub. It's gonna be beautiful when it's all done. Over here is where the gear doors were. Again, they had fallen off the sprues on me, and one of the doors have broken. One of the little tabs have broken off. There's a little extra piece. So anyways, I'm gonna have to reassemble all of that when it gets time for me to get to that point. And again, the elevators beautifully rendered with a fabric look to them, so you can play around with that. Sprue M is the bomb and everything associated with the bomb that it carries. Again, it looks really nice. Detail seems good enough that a good set of weathering on it will really make it pop. And then finally, you've got Sprue L, which also had a bunch more cockpit pieces. You can see almost all the pieces are missing. This had a lot of the frames, the instrument panel, the inner frames for the cockpit, all that kind of stuff, the radio tower, all that. So here's for example, more parts for the radio tower, which I haven't installed yet. All of your ammo drums for the guns and all that stuff that gets stored inside the cockpit, which I'll paint later and install after I'm finished fully painting all of that. So Sprue L is a lot more of those interior parts. It sucks that I'm doing this after I actually started building the kit, but c'est la vie. And finally, you've got your clear pieces. And the clear pieces, there's actually two different options. You've got one fully assembled kit or cockpit, the whole greenhouse. It's actually made up of 7 separate pieces. So you have it all as one if you want to just plop a canopy on and be done with it, or you get all 7 pieces here, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7 is the little tiny piece at the back. And then you can assemble the cockpit open or in any variation of open that you choose. Again, a beautiful addition by Hasegawa. Really shows that it's designed and built by a modeler for the modeler. Interestingly, which I'll get to when I go through the instructions, wingtip lights are provided, but there's no spots in the wings. You actually have to cut out the wingtip light spot if you want to use the clear ones. So it gives you that option to take the kit to the next level if you so choose. You've got all your windows here. There's 2 little windows that go on the side of the fuselage and one that goes up underneath like a bomb view. And then this is like a windbreak that goes between the forward cockpit and the rear cockpit. So the pilot can open his hood while he's flying and it doesn't blast wind into the back half of the cockpit and affect the navigator or bomb aimer when they're doing their job. So beautifully molded. The clear parts, I mean, they were packaged separately, so there's no scratches or anything to them. Optically, They're really nice. There's a little bit of a waviness to the view, so it's not a perfect one, but again, for something that got molded 25 years ago, it ain't too bad. So that covers all of the sprues. I'm just going to transfer all of this right back over into this. Instructions, typical Hasegawa instructions. They come with one big sheet that's all folded. On the front, you've got your description of the aircraft, as well in English and in Japanese, being a Japanese company, as well as some pictures of the finished product. So you start over here. I'll zoom in a little bit, make life a little bit easier for you all to see. Make sure that's in frame. There we go. So step one, you're working on the cockpit. It looks that now there's only 6 steps in this entire kit. So a lot is happening in each step, but the instructions are very clear with what you need to do to get there. And if you follow them appropriately, it shouldn't be too difficult. So you'll see in step one is effectively the entire cockpit floor and everything that's associated with it. I don't like marking up my instructions. I highly recommend, if you're new to this, or I guess if you're new to this, or you don't want to get confused, just mark off, like you know, scratch off, use a pen, put a line through the pieces as you're installing them so you don't forget anything, because there is a lot going on in here. But anyways, this includes everything. There's a bunch of these little handles. Like I said, I've already started, so you kind of get to see the process as I'm working on it, which is a bit different than how it normally goes. But I've got all these little bits, all these switches and stuff, and levers, and all that's glued on. Parts back here are glued on. This seat is glued on. The radio here and here, this little box, as well as the face. They're all different colors, so I'm going to paint them separately and glue them on later. The seat and the radio stack is assembled, and I'm going to be painting it separately and gluing it on after the fact. Over here, you've also got your 3 bulkheads, your rear bulkhead, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, but there's the rear bulkhead, the seat bulkhead, the seat itself, as well as the instrument panel, is all separate pieces as well. Now, if you look here, for example, there's the radio stack, and there's instructions. It shows you how to put the decals on, and if you are applying the decal, it asks you to level the surface, which means they want you to shave off all of the detail that's on that piece if you're going to use the decal. I'm going to look at the decal and see, does it make more sense to just dry brush it or use the decal? That's going to depend on what kind of quality and fidelity of the decal has. We'll figure that out later. Instrument panel, again, the decals are still put away. I haven't even pulled them out yet. It looks like you have the option, the instrument panel itself, which I can pull out here. It has quite a bit of nice detail. I'll zoom in so you can take a look at it. I'll zoom right in here, and I can put everything. Oh, look at that. It looks like that's a full-sized part. So the instrument panel itself has a lot of really nice instruments, and a little bit of detail painting and dry brushing will really make that pop. Now, as well, it looks like there's a decal over here, and I haven't pulled the decals out to actually look, but it looks like this decal over here is a black decal with all the instruments on it, and this decal is just a clear decal with the instruments on it. Again, I'm going off of just the instructions. I haven't looked at the decals since I bought this kit, so I'll have to double check that, but it looks like it gives you that option, which again allows people who want to take this build to the next level to put in that extra effort and get there. And for those who want to make it easy, they make it easy. So it's a really very little effort to make a much better build for the modeler. And again, it does say level service before applying decal. I'm going to look at the decals themselves. If they're just instruments, I'm going to leave it. But you know, that's where you can pick and choose how difficult you want to make things for yourself. Moving on to step 2, you're assembling the sidewalls and installing that on the pre-assembled floor. And you'll see there's all these extra pits you got to put on over here. Your the 5 ammo drums for the gun all get painted. I'm going to steel or something along those lines, but that'll get installed after. There is the bomb sight, as well as a bunch of little things. I've glued this piece on already because there's just a small black detail, and the area around it's green, and that's going to be really hard to paint separately, whereas this I can paint after the fact. You've also got the color breakdowns for your sidewalls. All your little pouches and panels and wiring and all that kind of stuff, and tubes. Everything's over here, and it shows you exactly what color to paint them, so you can go through and brush paint, pick everything out after the fact. That all gets assembled. Moving over to step 3, you're already assembling the fuselage. So your finished cockpit tub gets sandwiched in between the fuselages. You just make sure there's also this little bulkhead that goes in here you don't want to forget about, as well as the windows. If those go in from the outside, if they have a lip and they can't fall into the fuselage, those are best to put on after you finish painting. If they can fall into the fuselage, then you'll have to glue them in before you assemble everything. Make sure they're nice and solid, and then mask them after the fact. That'll depend on how well they fit. As well, we're assembling the gun. And there's two ways of doing it. One of it is when it's folded up and stored. The other one is when it is swung up and out in use. And I plan to have my cockpit open, so I'm going to have it out in use. It also includes the ammo drum and the gun sight. It'd be interesting to see how detailed that is and how scale it is. We'll see when I build it, obviously. And then for that little bulkhead I talked about here, it's a mini instrument panel. And again, there's two different options for decals. So I'll have to see how that all works. Yeah, moving down into step 4, we're working on the wings. So it shows here with your flaps, assembling the flaps, the left side and the right side, and then it shows you how to modify it. If you want to build it with the flaps up or down, you have to modify appropriately, and then it fits in. And again, you have to modify it here. If you want to have the flaps down versus flaps up, you have to open up different holes and cut off different tabs and stuff like that. So you have to see, see remove for flaps up or remove for flaps down. So it tells you what to remove on each one depending on how you want to do the flaps, and how you have to open up holes in the trailing edge of the wings depending on what version you choose to make. Also, it shows here with the wingtips, if you choose to use the clear wingtip lights, it shows you where to notch out the wingtips and put those little clear pieces in. You could always leave them off and just paint with a clear paint and some silver or whatever to make the wingtip light, the solid plastic, look like a clear lens, which again depends on how far you want to take it. Also note you have to paint the top. Now again, there's a bit of historical argument on this. Some people with this outer, so the area of the outer fuselage that's covered by the canopy framing. Some sources say that should be the interior color. Some sources say it should be the exterior color. I'll leave it up to the builder, how you choose to do it. But check your references, see if there's any reference for your specific aircraft out there, and then you can make that choice. As well, the horizontal stabs go on at this point, and now you almost got an assembled aircraft. So moving on to step 5, you're working on a lot of the underside, I'm going to call them fiddly bits. Bomb cradle, the bomb. Don't forget to put your little window in there. If you glue that bomb on before you install that little window, that is going to be very hard to fix. Your landing gears, I don't see provisions on this kit to build it with the landing gears up. The doors are pre-molded to be in the down position, so it might take a little bit of work to fiddle with it to get it to look like the way you want to have them closed. Not saying it can't be done, it's just a lot more work. But your landing gears get assembled, your tail wheel, your tail hook, and all those other little things get installed. Moving on to step 6, again, you're looking at a lot of the upper surface stuff. You're starting to assemble the engine, your firewall pieces, there's your exhaust pieces, your engine itself, the cowling and the propeller all get assembled. And again, depending on your paint scheme or the build sequence, you can play with what order you do this stuff in to make the painting stages easier for you. And then the last little bit here is the canopy, whether you do a full canopy or the segmented canopy. It does show you here all of the orientation for the segmented canopy to make sure you get everything in the right place. And then that is that. Don't forget, you also have to drill a hole to mount that antenna. And again, here's the solid canopy, and you got to drill the hole for the antenna, or the open canopy, and you still have to drill a hole for the antenna. So just keep an eye on those little details just so you don't get yourself into a corner. And that's it. After step 6, you are effectively done the kit. This next page gives you your paint callouts as well as your parts list. So if you ever do need to track down some used parts or replacement parts, you can figure out what you're missing. And then we get into the painting guide. The next side is just your usual set of warnings and decal instructions, and it's typical stuff. But we'll start here with the painting guide. So there's 2 aircraft, as I said. This aircraft here in Scheme 1 is the first attack wave from the Akagi. It's the commander's aircraft, Captain Matsuzaki Mitsuo and Commander Fuchida Mitsuro is the observer, and Airman First Class Mizuki Norinobu is the radio operator. And the aircraft on this side is the first attack wave of the Soryu. and it has Warrant Officer Sato Haru as the pilot, Airman First Class Kanai Naboru as the observer, and Airman Second Class Hanada Yoshikazu as the radio operator. I apologize if I butchered those names. I am not a Japanese speaker in the slightest. Now, the aircraft are very similar, and I've done a bit of research on the paint schemes because there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. There's a picture of this airframe here. First of all, according to these instructions, the bottom is silver, the upper part is dark green, and black on the forward cowling, and on this particular airframe here, it's got red on the vertical and horizontal stabilizers. This particular aircraft is very similar. It's green with the silver bottom, the black on the nose, and then it has brown splotches. Now, I've been doing some research on these schemes, and like I said, there is a photograph of this particular airframe that shows it heavily weathered, but apparently that was taken a number of months after the Pearl Harbor attack, and isn't accurate for an actual aircraft that was involved in the attack on Pearl Harbor. And as well, apparently the silver bottoms are not accurate. So I've been doing some research on this, and this is where I'm going to, again, I caveat this with, I am not an expert in Japanese World War II camo. So again, your results might vary. If what I'm saying is completely out of left field and wrong, by all means, down below, please leave me a comment. Let me know that I am wrong. But from what I gathered, these aircraft were initially flown and in service in an all-over silver scheme, like a natural metal silver scheme all over, with this black anti-glare panel on the nose, which is why the nose was painted black, because it was this anti-glare from all of the silver, which makes sense as a pilot. When World War II started and they realized that the silver was going to be highly reflective and easy to spot, the aircraft was overall painted in a light gray color. And you see that with a lot of these pictures of some of these early war aircraft, the Zeros and that. It's an all over gray scheme with the black cowling. And that's how these aircraft would have left Japan for the sea trip to Hawaii for the attack on Pearl Harbor. They would have been in an all-over gray with the black. So the bottoms would be gray, everything was gray. While they were on their way to Pearl Harbor, the decision was made to paint them green, and they were painted green on the carrier, which is why the different ships have different schemes. This ship, the Akagi, was all green. The Soryu had these brown splotches. It was because each carrier wing decided kind of how they were going to do their own paint scheme for this attack on Pearl Harbor. So during the actual attack, the green should be fresh because it was just painted. After a few months, you started to see this gray paint peeling, and then you see the heavily weathered picture because it was just a rush job done on a carrier and not a proper paint application. All of that being said, from what I could gather, the bottoms should not be silver. The bottoms should be the gray color that the aircraft carried before they were painted green. Again, this is just my quick research. Other information may contradict that. I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you what I read. Now, that being said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm definitely doing this aircraft here with the red tail. I really like the red tail. But I don't know what I'm going to do in terms of the color on the bottom. I really like the idea of doing the bottom silver. I think that's a cool look, especially because the fabric was left. You can't have metal fabric, so the fabric was done in like a primer color. The color itself, 56, is technically called Nakajima green. So I'll have to do some research on what that color is. I kind of like that idea, especially with the wings folded, to have the silver bottom with that primer Nakajima green on the control surfaces, and then have the green top and the red tail and the black. A lot of colors going on, and I think it'd look really cool. But again, I'm just not entirely sure which way I'm going to go yet. I want to make that decision as I get a little closer. But just be aware that there is a little bit of this going on in terms of research and which one is supposed to be the accurate color for these aircraft. Otherwise, they're very, very similar. This one's got the green splotches. I've done enough splotches with my German aircraft. I really don't feel like trying to airbrush all of these, which is another reason why I chose this one. But that's that. Decals, I will pull out. I really should be pulling them out anyways. I will need them for the cockpit at some point. So I'm just gonna pull out my binder and pull out my decals. So yes, that is, ripping the mic off again. These are the decals for this kit. They are aged. They're starting to yellow a little bit, but I am still going to do my best to use them. In that case, for example, with like, I would cut the 18 down as tight as I can. I might even cut, try to cut the center out of that. We'll see once you get the decal solution on it, how bad it looks. That being said, you just stick them in a window, tape them to your window in the sun. The sun will bleach out all of that yellowness, and we'll go back to clear if you have to. So that's an option. But the ink should stand up, but the yellowing of the clear, that'll fade pretty quick if you put it in the sun. And as I predicted, the instrument panels, you get two options. You've got the one that's black, you just slam it on and it's done, or you've got the clear, so you can go through and paint out. And that's probably what I'm going to end up using, is I'll use this clear one. I don't think I'm going to use the radio stack decals. I think I'm going to just paint that black and dry brush. I think I'll get a better look, but I'm definitely going to use these clear ones. And even this one I might cut down a little bit and just use that central piece and paint it the interior green color, and then paint those little blobs. I'll play with it. I'll see. I don't like the idea that this is a solid big decal. I'm going to cut them down a little bit. And I'm not going to use those. And then this decal here, this little weird one, is actually the seat. So it looks like there's holes in the back of the seat. It was easier to use a decal than to actually mold that into the kit. But otherwise it does, and the other interesting part is if you look here, you've got A1, A2, B1, B2, E1, E2. But the decals only show A1 and B1. So it actually gives you enough markings. You don't have the underwing markings. You can see this scheme has the 1 and this scheme has the 18. But if you took out this underwing marking, what you have left is enough decals to basically make up any of the aircraft that was involved in the attack on Pearl Harbor, which gives you lots of options. Now that being said, you only have the one A1301 that's on the red tail, but I believe only the one aircraft had the red tail with the yellow markings. That was the leader aircraft. Every other aircraft would have had red letters on the blue tail. So this gives you enough decals that with a little bit of research, you could do up any Kate that was involved in the attack on Pearl Harbor, which is a nice touch. So that pretty much wraps up the look at that Kate. Again, apologies for doing it after I started construction. I kind of got ahead of myself and whatnot, but it is what it is. So that's that. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, anything like that, please down below. Feel free to reach out and say hi. I'll do my best to answer any questions I can. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.